you have this way of navigating the world that is very internal. It's very, almost auditory, but not auditory through language. It's almost like if you imagine a manifestor moving through the world, they kind of go the dink, the dink, the dink without language. And so as they follow that inner creative pulse, they create this wave of energy.
Hi, and welcome to the Fusionary Health Podcast. It's me, your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta, and today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Dr. Karen Parker. Dr. Parker is a renowned expert in quantum human design, and she had the unique opportunity to study directly under Ra Uru Hu, the original founder of the human design system. For over 2 decades, Dr. Parker has been teaching and guiding people to align their lives, careers, and especially entrepreneurial journeys with their unique energetic blueprint. She's particularly passionate about helping women redefine success, and she often teaches on topics like human design for personal growth, parenting, and entrepreneurship. I'm so excited to dive into all of this with her today. Welcome, Dr. Parker.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So I have been obsessed with and into human design for a long time. Mm-hmm. Like many of us on our own personal journey, whether it's personal development journey or our entrepreneurial or business journey or parenting journey, whatever the journey is you're on, so many of us have taken different personality quizzes. Mm-hmm. We've taken the Myers-Briggs. We've taken different big ones to understand who am I and why am I this way and what career would be better for us. And when a good friend of mine recommended human design and I got my chart, I thought, gosh, okay, I'm different than others. This kind of explains why I see the world so differently and have the insights I have, but also why I don't quite function like everyone around me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you today because I think self-knowledge is such a beautiful way to kind of give us the peace we need and the forgiveness we need and the self-understanding we need to really help us navigate life in a more satisfied way. Because otherwise, oftentimes we battle against our own nature. So will you kick us off with what led you to getting into human design and studying under the original creator and really kick us off with what is human design for those who may not know?
Well, it's a long and short story, but I think it's also maybe more of a magical story. When I think it was 1999, I was a full-time mom, stay-at-home mom. My husband at the time was really going through a major burnout. And I sent him away to Sedona, Arizona. And I said, go take a spiritual retreat. So he came back from Sedona with this weird looking chart and he showed it to me. And I remember the moment so clearly because I was standing in our front yard and I looked at that chart and just, it was almost like a temple bell went off inside of me. And I just knew I have to study and learn everything I can about this chart. So we put our house on the market. We sold it 2 weeks later, packed up all the kids, the cats, the dogs, and left Houston, Texas, suburban Houston, Texas, and landed in Sedona. And when we got there, my youngest son had an ear infection. So I took him to the pediatrician and I came out of the pediatrician's office with this little kid on my hip. And across the hallway from the pediatrician's office was a door that had the human design symbol on it. And I thought, well, I'll just go in here. So I opened up the door and there was a big giant desk and a little tiny woman behind the desk. And she said to me, did you come for the job? And I said, yes, I did. And she hired me there on the spot. That ended up being the headquarters for Human Design America at the time. And I got to work and learn and study and spend time learning from Ra Uru Hu, the founder. So that's the beginning of the journey. For those of you who don't know, human design, as you said, is a personality assessment system. It's a synthesis of Eastern and Western astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Hindu chakra system, and Judaic Kabbalah. Basically, what it does is it takes your birthday, birth time, and birthplace and spits out a map. And it's really just, I like to think of it not so much as a map as much as it is, I think, your soul curriculum. It gives you key insights into how do you use energy? How do you optimize your energy? How do you fulfill your purpose? Where do you find meaning? How do you interface with the world? You know, I think one of the things to really maybe help people understand it is I always think of it as a complementary tool to other personality assessment modalities. So I actually used Myers-Briggs for a lot of years in my coaching practice, and I've never really fully scrapped it and replaced it. But I find that other systems really tell you the what you are, and human design sort of gives you the information as to how you can actually fulfill that what in a healthy way.
I love that. I love that explanation of it. Um, I want everyone after this to take their human design
Mhm.
chart and make it and know that between that timing and between that understanding, what's interesting is I am a Indian girl. I'm born into a Hindu family. So we are big believers in astrology. So I mean, my mom regularly went to astrologers for us growing up and was like, well, how do I help my kid get into college? Like we use it as a regular tool to kind of navigate what we want to see is going to happen or what we want to understand. And so even now, I use astrology regularly. I'm a huge believer in it. I find it fascinating. And so coming to human design, will you kind of explain to us the frameworks and those energy blueprints of human design that can kind of illustrate to people and maybe give them a little bit of insight into what they might be?
Mhm, mhm. So the basics of human design, it really is somewhat simple, and that is in the human design system, there are 5 energy types, and each one of those energy types has a different way of processing energy, a different way of working, a different purpose, a different path that they are designed to follow. When you understand that, it really helps you and supports you in making better decisions. So each of those 5 energy types has what I'll call a prescription for healing. And that prescription is really about helping you reconnect with the wisdom of the body. Because part of what happens is, as we are, even before we're born, we start the process of what we call being conditioned. Meaning, before you're even born, your cells are encoded with certain aspects of ancestral memory. Once you're born, you start to experience the world and you internalize your own experiences, in particular, your own interpretation of those experiences and your energetics of those experiences. You get conditioned by familial expectations, community expectations, cultural expectations, collective expectations. And at a certain point, a big part of your personality is coded into your body, into your nervous system. And what actually happens for most of us is that in order to accept that coding and to live in a way that oftentimes keeps us safe or causes us to believe that there are certain formulas for success that we have to follow, we oftentimes have to check out from our natural connection to what is true and right for us. Our body is a compass. And for us, oftentimes, to really survive in a world where there are more formulas for success or expectations, we oftentimes really have to numb ourselves out. And when we numb ourselves out, we lose connection with our capacity to make decisions that keep us strengthened, that keep us optimized, and that keep us fulfilling our true purpose in the world. So the first part of human design and really the most crucial information, I think, even though there's lots of really fun and sexy things you can talk about in human design, really the basics that I think is the most important is it's a prescription to help you remember, what does it feel like in my body when a choice is right for me, and what does it feel like in my body when it's not right for me, and to start from that place to make really a different set of decisions that hopefully bring you into deeper alignment with your energy, your purpose, more meaning in your life, and the fulfillment of this really beautiful, unique story that you came here to fulfill, that no one else in the whole cosmos can fulfill.
Absolutely. I love that because you're right. It is that returning to self.
Mhm.
And oftentimes our family frameworks, those cultural frameworks around us will drive us to be different. And that is definitely applicable to me. I am
Mhm.
born to big generators and manifesting generators, and I'm surrounded by them all the time. And I battle hard because I'm a projector and I'm like, okay, I can do it. I'm gonna do it. I will, I will. And then I hit burnout so fast. And I'm like, why can't I keep up with everyone's pace? And
Mhm.
when I finally pause and check in with myself, my whole being's like, can you please just walk in nature? Like
Yeah.
all the self care you do actually is the winning formula. You know this, but it's like you kind of need those reminders if every single being around you is different. And then you're this one lone soldier who's like, I actually think I can do this whole thing differently. it can cause a lot of friction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, for sure. And I think, I have 8 children, and my youngest is 16. She's a projector. And she's my first kid that I've really been able to raise true to her energy from the very start. And it's, it's so interesting to watch her innate connection to that inner compass and to really see it in action, and to really witness her capacity to do sort of what you said, to know, I need to check out. I need a pajama day. I need to just not leave the bed today because of whatever. And to see her be able to incorporate that into a really active life, but to do it in a way that's very balanced for her, even though it's not how I would do it, or I would structure it for myself because I'm different.
sure. So, will you dive into those energy blueprints for the audience?
Sure. So the first energy blueprint is called the manifester. Manifestors are approximately 8% of the population. Manifestors have what we call an internal nonverbal creative flow. So when you're a manifestor, you're kind of directly plugged into the quantum pulse, if you want to call it that. And so you have this way of navigating the world that is very internal. It's very, almost auditory, but not auditory through language. It's almost like if you imagine a manifestor moving through the world, they kind of go the dink, the dink, the dink without language. And so as they follow that inner creative pulse, they create this wave of energy. And one of the things they have to learn to do, particularly in the beginning of learning about how they operate, is they have to learn to let people who are going to be impacted by their movement know what they're doing. And what happens a lot of times for manifestor types is when you start, first of all, you have to stop your creative flow, find the language. That in and of itself sometimes is really difficult. And then you have to let people know what you're doing. And for a lot of manifestors, because they're powerhouses, they have learned over time to not tell people what they're doing because they have to protect and hide their power. And so part of that healing process is getting them back in touch with giving themselves not permission, because they don't need permission, but giving themselves a strategy to let people know what they're doing, and then to make sure that the people in their lives who they're surrounding themselves with give them the space to follow that flow. Because if they can't follow that flow, then they can't follow their inner creative impulses, and then they get angry. And it's not really anger. I really don't like that language so much for the manifestors, because really what it is, it's creative disruption. When you have that creative flow and somebody's stopping you, you can't complete that flow, and it disrupts you. The second type is called the generator. Generators are here to do the work in the world. And I think that's a really important thing we have to look at when we look at the types, because there are types who are not designed to work in the traditional way that we think of as work. For example, the manifestor type is not here to work sustainably. It doesn't mean they can't work, but they're not here to work sustainably. And so learning how to balance that energy, especially when we start looking at themes like burnout or, chronic health conditions, which are oftentimes a symptom of burnout, that if you're trying to work against your own energy, you really not only just deplete your spirit, you can deplete your body. So the generator types are the types that are designed to work. They are designed, though, to find the work they love. And if they don't have the work that they love, they oftentimes can feel really frustrated. What will happen a lot of times for the generator types is if they're not working true to their passion and following what feels good and right for them, they'll settle for mediocrity. And really, they can burn out in kind of a different way. They don't usually have a full system burnout like some of the other types, but they will burn out by settling for mediocrity and living what I'd like to call a meh kind of life, where they're not really activating their full vitality in their life force. They oftentimes can get frustrated. And what happens for many generator types is they'll get frustrated and then they'll quit, and get frustrated and quit, frustrated and quit. And so they feel really unfulfilled because they never learn how to hold that space for the momentum that builds up before they have another growth cycle in their lives. And so one of the things we do when we work with generators is train them how to get out of those frustration cycles and learn how to really stay the course so that they can become more masterful. There's a third type that's kind of a hybrid type between the manifestor and the generator. Those are manifesting generators. They have a lot of the themes, and if you're a manifesting generator, you may have related to some of the aspects of the manifestor. You also have that internal nonverbal creative flow, but you also have to find the right work. And so you're always balancing between that creative impulse that can move very quickly for the manifestor, that desire to find the right work, that desire to tap into that passionate place, But what will oftentimes happen for the manifester is because you can move really fast and part of your job is to figure out the shortest, fastest way to do something, you'll often find that you're either multitasking or you're taking leaps over creative steps that you need to take and having to go back and fix it. But you are very effective and fast and can be also very, very powerful. But also you have to get in touch with that inner creative essence and articulate it, put words to it, and then be able to explain it to others so they can move out of the way so you can do your thing.
Sure.
The next type, which is my favorite type, that's about 20% of the population, is called the projector. That's you. And the projector, just like the manifester, is not here to work in the traditional way of working. Again, it doesn't mean you can't work. It means you have to work in a way that works for your energy. Otherwise, you are very vulnerable as a projector to boom and bust cycles of energy. And so if you are not sustaining your energy correctly, which means you need cycles of rest, you need to be in an environment where you're valued, because you get your energy when people value you. And if they don't value you and you're trying to push yourself into an environment where they don't see you, hear you, they don't recognize your brilliance, it can be utterly depleting. And so the projector has to wait for recognition and attention because their job is to manage and guide others. The waiting for the invitation thing can be tricky, especially in our culture that says, if you want to have success, you got to work. And if you want to be more successful, you got to push and work harder. And the projector does not have that capacity or can't sustain that. And what I find a lot of times for the projector types is they tend to burn out somewhere between 35 and 40 if they make it that long, because they really just don't have that sustainable quality anymore to be able to push through. And of course, one of the things they have to heal when they do burn out, and I always think of, I know why we're talking about burnout, but burnout is a big theme that I see a lot in my clients.
Yeah.
You know, when they do burn out, oftentimes it's really kind of a blessing because it's what I like to call a cosmic pause. And for the projector, that cosmic pause is an opportunity to, first of all, heal the shame that we put onto the projector because they don't work in the same way that some other people work. And secondly, they have to heal their self-worth, because when you're a projector, you're not here to manage and guide everyone. You're here to manage and guide the people who see you, who recognize you, and then put you in the position of leadership or management, and then hear you because they value you. And if you're not being heard, it can make you feel really depleted and bitter. The last type is pretty rare, is less than 1% of the population. It's called the reflector. The reflectors are really these beautiful karmic mirrors that walk into a room, take in the energy of the room, experience it, and then through their behavior, their choices and words, actually embody that energy and reflect it back out. So they're kind of barometers or canaries in the coal mine, if you will. And they're also unicorns, if you will, because they have a very, very different way of healing that disconnect between the body. And it takes a lot of time for the reflector. Reflectors need about 28 to 30 days to make good, effective decisions, because they have to feel their way through all the energy they're taking in and find that thread of their own energy before they can really solidly make a good choice.
Got it. Thank you for that. I love hearing again about them, because I start to think like, okay, my best friend, manifesting generator, my sister, my children. It's so important to understand who you're dealing with your children, because otherwise you could be pushing a kid and trying to ask for a lot, and that might not be their nature.
Right.
Because I am a projector, I have a lot of sympathy towards, like, what if you're not one of the majority? Then,
Right.
then how are people managing you? What are they expecting out of you? It's so interesting. I, of course, as a projector, want to learn more about projector. But if manifesting generators and generators are up to 70% or 80% of the population, I think you said,
Yep.
Can we kind of talk about that group first, since that's going to be the majority of who's listening in today, and kind of share with them? I look at it as, if that's your type, you have and what's interesting also is, I'm so curious if this correlates pretty directly to Ayurveda and the doshas and the types of people we have. Because when you talked about a manifester, I was like, that sounds like a vata. A vata person can just flow through life and can creatively create things. They are so artistic. They have like a direct line to God, pulling in that creative force, but they're not really built for heavy work or sustaining a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Versus then you went into that generator. I was like, that sounds like guffa energy. That person's meant to do one thing after another, and just keep going. And they're sturdier and they have that like earth energy to keep consistency. So it's interesting to me to kind of correlate it to the Ayurvedic wisdom. But just taking generator and manifesting generator, can we talk for a moment about burnout and chronic disease? Because this podcast is about health.
Mm-hmm.
And I know as a projector how often I burn out, but with the manifesting generators and generators out there, if they're working and moving and grooving and building, but not understanding those elements of balance to bring in, I can just imagine how much like disease and frustration they can create.
Totally. And I would say, in a way, that's not exclusive to type. I think I would say the vast majority of people that show up for a human design reading are usually showing up because they're burned out. And I think the burnout just manifests differently in the different energy types, because to a certain degree, the generator types have the capacity to physically push through the burnout, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally, that's where they sort of start to live at half speed. Because one of the things that's really remarkable about the generator types is when they learn to follow their own truth and that own visceral physical response to what's right for them, they actually unlock a level of vitality that is missing when they're not following that, when they're fitting themselves into a box, when they're doing what they think they should do, or they're doing what they think they need to do to make money. If it's not that passionate pursuit, it shuts that vitality down. And again, one of the sad things to me about the generator types is that they absolutely can keep slugging through, whereas as a projector or a manifestor, you might literally physically just not be able to. But the generators can kind of push through. But it's not a happy life. It's not a fulfilling life. It's not a satisfying life. So I would certainly say for the generator types, I forgot the original question. You were going somewhere with that.
Just an understanding of if you in each type don't understand your constitution and then start living by it, how it affects burnout and how it causes that chronic disease piece
Totally.
outside.
And I think that was those were where I was headed. Thank you. What we see in the chart is, especially when we start to look at chronic disease and immune function, there's an energy in the chart that correlates to the 26 hexagram from the Chinese I Ching, and it's connected to the will center, which is, there are 9 centers in the chart. Those centers correlate to the 7 Hindu chakras, and that will center correlates to the heart chakra. It's the place where in human design we hold our ego, our personal self, which is designed but ultimately to be in service to our higher self. And it's the place where we hold our value, our self-worth. And so authenticity lives there. And what happens for all of us, regardless of type, is when we compromise our value, or when we're not living in our value, we get out of integrity. And really the way I define it is there's 5 kinds of integrity. There's physical integrity, which means when we're not valuing ourselves, we're not taking care of our body. And oftentimes what happens is the body itself starts to react. And when we look at the fact that integrity lives in that gate 26, well, that's the gate that's designed to, that correlates to the thymus, which is where, a large part of the immune function happens. So if we have in any way internalized a narrative that says it's not okay or safe or valuable for me to be who I am and how I am, not only does that affect our value, it literally affects our immune system and our immune system function. The second way that we get out of integrity is we get out what we call resource integrity, which means you start misusing physical resources as an attempt to prove your value. And oftentimes what will happen is we'll pursue something like, say, money, because we think, oh, if I have X number of dollars or X number of whatever currency, if I have money, then my value goes up. And of course, our society kind of reinforces that. So but then again, you deplete yourself because you don't have the resources, or you exhaust yourself because you're trying to prove your value instead of actually doing what's in alignment. The third way we get out of integrity is we compromise in our identity. And again, anytime you compromise in our identity, you put your immune system at risk. And that, I think, ultimately, when we start looking at burnout as a topic, and we start looking at, the World Health Organization, which classifies burnout as a work related problem, basically, that says you're not making enough money or you're working too hard. Well, I think really what I see in my practice is that does not bear out. That I see people that are working really great jobs, making great money, who are ill because they're not being true to their authentic identity. And there's that correlation between identity and health, and particularly immune function. The next way we get out of integrity is moral integrity. And that's usually what happens when we don't think we're enough, right? So we compromise on our moral integrity. And then we get out of energetic integrity. We commit energy that we think, we commit energy we don't have, because again, our culture values things like hustle. And if you're not hustling, or you think you have to hustle to be valued or to get ahead, then you're putting that energy out there that you don't have. And it's like a bank, and you deplete that bank account. Again, it's going to hit that gate 26 energy, which really impacts that immune function and makes us vulnerable to chronic immune disorders.
Wow. It's so interesting to hear you explain it that way, because I think it's so normalized in our society to take our personality, our energy, whatever it is we have, and completely break apart from it to go create business, revenue, profit, passive income, whatever success is. And what I hear you saying is you need to really define success according to your own terms. And that might be hard based on the people around you, based on the culture, based on the trends, based on modern day society, based on social media, which is pushing a lot of agendas in different ways. And it's really about remembering that when you are out of integrity, that is a piece of why you could be generating disease. And what's interesting is in my new book, I have a book coming out with Hay House in the new year. I was writing it about inflammation. And I wrote all this stuff because I love talking about inflammation and health. And finally, I thought, how am I going to explain to people that it's your own friction inside? Like, I actually did not think about it at the human design level. I thought of it more as like the frustration, the anger, the stress, the chronic stress we're holding itself will cause inflammation. And so I called that mental inflammation. So I was trying to encapsulate that it's your mental, emotional, spiritual, like all the other stuff outside of physical can cause this inflammation in the system that's harming us. And that's kind of what I heard you just explain was we have an integrity with self, and sometimes we're really breaking that integrity, and eventually that has a price.
Totally. It has a price, and it has multiple prices. I mean, we can talk about it in the context of the body, but, it also causes a break with spirit. We start to lose meaning in our life. And when we lose meaning, we lose motivation. When we lose motivation, we lose drive. And when we lose drive, we don't do. And then we get stuck in these tape loops of inertia, and we fail to fulfill that full potential. And it's a huge toll. And I think one of the things that I really love about using human design as a tool to do is to really give you a systematic approach to get into exploring what's the story, what's my narrative, what am I telling, who am I telling myself and the world, who am I telling myself and the world that I am, and how do I recover the integrity of my story so that I begin to embody that authentic identity and then start making those oftentimes honestly really courageous choices, because as you said, sometimes you really have to push against the stories that you've internalized. And it's scary, right? Because you think, is anybody going to love me if I actually speak my truth? Is anybody going to value me? Am I going to make money if I actually speak my truth? And I think on a more mystical level, one of the beautiful things that I see over and over again is you might change your level of wealth by society's definition if you shift to that more authentic identity, but you won't miss a dollar, because what you end up creating is a very different definition of wealth and abundance. And it is really, I think, fantastic to witness that when somebody starts choosing for themselves, how much, at the risk of being, woo woo here, how much magic and serendipity and synchronicity you start unlocking, and you end up moving yourself into a place where, you don't lose the love. You certainly redefine the value, and you discover that all of the energy that you were spending trying to maintain a mask is liberated. And now all of a sudden you've got all this creative power that you weren't able to tap into before.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shivani Gupta, and I created Fusionary formulas because I believe everyone deserves a natural way to support their body's health. If you struggle with joint discomfort or stiffness, our turmeric gold delivers powerful curcumin in a form your body can truly absorb. It's science-backed with the highest quality ingredients and designed to support your body's natural inflammatory response. Take the next step in your health and wellness journey today. Visit fusionaryformulas.com and use code FusionaryHealth for 15% off. Fusionary Formulas, ancient wisdom, modern science, maximum impact. Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. I've had that experience myself when I built my supplement company a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
I went at it in this one way. I was like, I'm going to change all of orthopedic medicine. That's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't occur to me that I would become the sales rep, the pharma rep of my own Ayurvedic supplement company. I thought I'd have a team, but the whole team fell apart. Whoever was supposed to be part of my team, everyone who initially started the company with me fell out. I was like, okay, well, I have this beautiful product, this beautiful idea. I guess I have to do it myself. And so year after year, for 7 years, I was on the road hustling. I would go doctor's office after doctor's office from like Miami to Jupiter, because I'm in South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Every single year I burnt out and wanted to quit. And the only thing that kept me going was people who would call in, because I was answering the 800 number, and they'd say, oh my gosh, you have no idea. Your turmeric changes my life. I need it. And I would say, okay, well, I made this thing that helps people. I better keep going again and again. But eventually I met a mentor who said, you know what? You are doing this in a way that's really rough on you. Can I propose you try it this other way? And he said, why don't you just go teach Ayurveda and turmeric on podcasts? What a light bulb moment. He goes, just try it. What's the harm at this point, right? You've already struggled 7 years in. Let's just try a different route. You've been hard-headed on that one agenda. And I did. And guess what? I'm a projector. Guess what I love to do? Just teach. I want to teach the wisdom. I want to inspire people. I love working from home. I love not being on the road, sitting in offices where I'm completely not valued, where they think I'm a bit insane. And just that pivot changed the quality of my life so that now, serendipitously, I loved that word, so much magic comes into my life. And the minute I break and I'm like, no, I need to go back. I need to do it. I can feel all of a sudden the misalignments, and that energy kind of goes dead. And it's a reminder, no, please don't step back into that old way of doing things. Stay in this lane, this channel of energy called you finally figured out what you love to do. You figured out a way for it to work for you. So just keep going. And so I sent you my birth date, birth info and everything. And I was going to ask you, like, can you give me examples of other clients, which I will ask as well. But will you use me as an example to illustrate to the audience today how someone's chart can so closely impact their life purpose and the way they should do what they do?
Totally. So, all right. So I have your chart. I'm looking at my phone. I'm not texting. But because I have it in your, and certainly I would say, you are a projector. Of course, you understand that. That's a very first level part of your story. So if we were going to take your chart and use it as a storytelling tool, the very first thing we would work on is how do we recover your main character? And that is, of course, your projector energy is your main character in your story. And you are a projector who is here to manage and guide and direct others. That's the role of all projectors. And of course, learning to do that sustainably is essential, especially because when we look at your chart, you have other markers in your chart that say sustainability is potentially a weakness in your chart if you're not paying attention to that. If we look at storytelling, we know that every main character has personality traits and quirks sometimes, right? So when we look in human design, there's what's called a profile in the chart. That's the profile is sort of like, it looks like a fraction on your chart. It's comprised of two numbers. So you are a 1-4 profile. What that means for you as a projector is, first of all, your main character, your energy that's all about managing, guiding, and directing has first line energy, which means you're exploratory, you're investigative. You need to build for yourself a foundation of information. And then ultimately part of what you're here to give the world is that information that you've been curating. So yes, of course, teacher, right? A teacher projector makes total sense. And somebody who's here to give people information and knowledge. The second number in your profile is a 4. The fourth line is, first of all about relationships. So there's a part of you that transmits that information that you know through relationships, through networking. I mean, I can imagine what that was like for you, meeting up with all these physicians as you hit the road. There's a part of you that knows how to know people. And that complements, of course, your projector energy. But it also is a need. Your main character has a need for stability and consistency. And if you don't get that stability and consistency, or if the rug gets pulled out from under you, which will happen. I mean, it's lifetime. Sometimes unexpected things happen, right? We get laid off, a partner gets sick, something, we get sick, stuff happens. For you, that can be a weak spot in your story because you need to, you're the kind of person that likes to have at least 12 or 15 backup plans. And so
Yep.
if you don't have a backup plan or you can't figure out what's next, it can be really anxiety provoking until as you mature, and I'm sure you're there, you learn the cadence of transformation. And then you're able to actually be a resource for others to teach people how to make change because you yourself have gone through change. And I would certainly say, looking at this chart, that burnout has probably been a big teacher for you, that you learned a lot about transformation and recovery and that is change through your journey with burnout, and probably through also, I'm assuming you've left traditional medicine to launch on a very unusual path by society standards, right? In the next level of your chart, we look at the energy centers. And as I shared, we have 9 energy centers in human design. Those correlate to the 7 chakras from the Hindu chakra system. Those centers are either going to be colored in or white, depending on how your unique chart is configured. Anything that's white, we call that open. That's where you take energy and information in from the world around you. And you don't just take it in, you actually take it in and amplify it. And when we don't understand that about ourselves, those places where we're taking in energy can oftentimes get us off course from our own integrity, because we begin to take in other people's energies and we get confused and we think it's our energy instead of energy that we're experiencing or sampling. When we start to get to this level of the chart, we start to connect with what I call the sacred flaws in our story. And those are places where we have learning that we can go through that can help actually strengthen us. The wisdom for you in your open centers is it's a really great way for you to know others. So you absolutely understand and guide people's life force energy. I'm sure that's what you've done all your life as a physician, as a healer. You are able to, in your open centers, take in people's identities and their stories. So you can really assess people just literally by feeling them. You feel who they are at a very deep level. And that allows you to tailor how you teach in order to best meet them where they're at in their story as students. And then your voice, your throat center is also open, which means you're able to modulate and shift and change how you communicate to best meet the needs of the people that you are working with. In the shadow, those 3 energies can be not knowing when enough is enough, needing to feel, having the drive to feel like you have to prove your lovability, and feeling like you got to do things to get attention and recognition, which can be exhausting for a projector to have. A lot of projectors will adopt really, exhaustive strategies to try to be seen if they feel like people aren't seeing them. So those are kind of the shadows. And of course, with an open throat center, that's also where the thyroid lives. And if you're not using that throat energy correctly, then you're tanking your whole endocrine system. And there you are back in bed with burnout, right? One of the other pieces in your centers, when we look at centers that are colored in, we call them defined. Those are energies that you have consistent access to, but they're also part of your learning curriculum. And one of the things for you that's really interesting to note is, first of all, you have what's called a defined will center. The will center, when it's colored in, is designed to work to rest. And it's tricky when you have a defined will center because you can push through exhaustion better than other people. But then you end up with like massive burnout. So you already we're like in level 3 here of the chart, and we've got this theme of burnout happening. So for you, really standing strong in your own value, recognizing that you literally are the resource that you're here to give. I mean, you can sell supplements and information, but you are actually the resource. And that includes your own story and what it is that you're here to bring forth. Then we go to the next level and we look at what's called the circuitry in the chart. That if you look at it, if you see a chart, there's all these little lines and connecting all the little geometric centers in the chart. That's called the circuitry. So just like you've got wiring in your house, they're aggregates of archetypal themes that play together well in the chart and that give us core themes. First of all, I'll say you have the channel 4426, which in business means you have the capacity to really be able to read the room and make a sale. You could be potentially a good salesperson. But on a different level, when we look at it as healing energy, you're actually here to help people break free from the patterns of the past and restore them with the information that you bring back to integrity. And of course, that's all the work that you do. And you've got a couple of other channels too. You're here to help people correct and realign patterns. You're here to connect to people deeply, and you have a natural capacity for intimacy. I'm not surprised that your intuition is always telling you to go outside and be in nature, because you are a nature girl by design. And I would tell you, if you were my client, I would say, get a dog or a cat if you don't have one, because an animal actually can help you process emotional energy with all that sensitivity that you have, because you really connect with plants, nature, animals, the animal kingdom, the elemental kingdom. That's your jam. And certainly part of what you're here to teach and bring to others. You need consistency. If you have anything in your life that's inconsistent, you need patterns and rhythms and consistency, and you need time to meditate and think. And I mean, that's crucial, because your brain will get tired if you don't. And you're a dreamer and you're a visionary.
Wow. Incredible. I hope everyone listened to that and could understand. If you know me, which many of you who listen to this podcast know me, and if you don't know me well, you've heard, I don't know, up to 100 episodes of me sharing things about myself. That is why I love human design, because everything she just said rang true. And what's even more powerful about it for me, as someone who's always looking at everyone around her and is like, why do you guys all work day, night, 24 hours? You guys are all working. Why was I born into this family? And I'm the opposite of all of you. And really, the way I work, I can just move in nature, and I can move my whole world with me. If I just walk out in nature, I'll get 20 hours of work done in 5 minutes, because nature is my, I can channel nature. I can use it as a vehicle. So if you're listening, I want you to understand that this wisdom can really direct and support you in managing how you manage your time, structure your day, structure your life, structure your rhythms, and also have this awareness, so that, so much of what I am teaching is Ayurveda and intuition. So I love that human design shows that the minute you're stepping kind of off the path and you feel it, you remember the human design framework to say, you know what? I am hustling too hard. I'm a projector. Let me come back in. Because like you said in there, so much of what I do is teach. I use my voice. I'm tuning into the person in front of me to figure out, how am I going to convince you and show you how to shift your rhythm and behavior to shift your health. And if I don't watch it, I sometimes can feel like I'm building a plane and I'm setting it on fire at the same time. And that's always my sign. I'm like, oh, you're building something and you are burning out on the ride. No, just stop. Stop right now. Don't build the plane. Don't take that ride. All of it's bad. Come right back. You are Mother Earth energy. How are you going to do it again? And I'm in that mode right now. I'm in the middle of a book launch, and I started building it at the 200-mile-an-hour pace. And my whole being was like, don't you do this. You will burn out so hard. We don't think you'll ever even teach again or write a book again. None of this will happen again. And I pulled it back and I said, the universe is going to guide this. I'm just here to enjoy it. I'm here to enjoy the whole thing all the way through. And of course, the energy of the whole thing changed. So I love the insights you gave. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, you're very much on path. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because I'll certainly say, especially for the projector types, I don't find them on path very often because the path is so counter to what our culture teaches us. And and I think it's tragic because really the projectors are designed to be the leaders in the world, and we need our projectors to be healthy and vibrant and vital so that they can step into that leadership role, especially now. I think we're in so much collective crisis, and I know I hear it. I hear it. I have I told you I have the privilege of living with a projector, which, has been such a beautiful thing. This kid was born knowing. She just knows. And she's always had this capacity to drop this gobsmacking wisdom, even when she was 3 and 4. That's just like, what? How do you know that? And, to hear her at 16 really evaluate what the world needs and prepare herself to be ready to go out and take that leadership role eventually. It's a profound thing. And I wish that for all projectors, that you all need to get that healing done so you can get out there and make us make us better, because we need it. So
Yeah, and you know what? Oftentimes the world doesn't want to believe us. And so you learn to really numb out your understandings because you don't want to be the crazy one. I remember 2020, I landed, I'll share the story and then I want to get back into human design. I landed from India. I'd just taken my family to India and we knew there was this thing called COVID starting. People were like, there's this thing called COVID. It's a virus. Don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to India. I've worked hard for this trip. I'm just going to go. And when I come back, I'll look at the internet and see what's happening. I remember on the flight back that day, had Wi-Fi and trip was over, and I just started reading everything online. And by the time I landed, I called my best friend and I said, here is what I want you to know. The world will shut down. School is shutting down. There is no summer camp. We are lucky that we are successful enough. You better build your house as a fortress. You need 6 months of reserves. You will be raising your child yourself. You better order in bikes, Nintendos, kites, whatever it takes to raise your child in nature and keep them healthy. I assure you, your year just ended. And she goes, Shivani, you are insane. You are 100% nuts. Everything you're saying is insane. And I said, I am really sorry, but my gut is going to be correct. And we are so screwed. And she always afterwards is like, Shivani, the level of clarity you came at me with. And then I tried to start managing all my in-laws, but all of them do think to some extent that I am crazy. And I was like, fine, then I'll just prepare for double. And then I'm here to support all of you because you're not going to see what I see because I saw it so clearly. And then what happened? 2 weeks later, school closed in Florida. 2 weeks later, beaches closed, parks closed, everything closed. And I thought, why are there so few of us who can see so clearly? That's so painful when you can see, but no one believes you. Like I truly see Western medicine existing completely differently in the future. But I'm just 10 years, 20 years too early. So I look like a crazy person because I go to orthopedic neurology conferences and I'm like, hey, you guys, there's a different approach here to patient care, to patient outcomes. Do you see it? And they're all like, no, you are nuts. And as a projector, when you're unheard and unbelieved, there's actually nothing more painful. So you have to really learn to build defense shields and say, okay, I'll be crazy for 2 days. Then I'm going to leave that environment because I can't hold that energy for much longer. And so taking human design and so much that you shared today, I'm sure the listeners I don't understand gates, channels, and all these things. I wanted them to get that highlight of it's not just your main energy blueprint. It's actually layers deeper in such a beautiful way that it's really custom to you. It's your birth time, your birthplace. So will you kind of speak into stories you've seen around people you've worked with and how getting this knowledge completely transformed their lives? And then any other piece of human design that we haven't talked into yet.
Totally. So, I would say, if I do a loose collection of the thousands of readings that I've done, I have seen people. I'll tell you my favorite story. I have a client. She's 43. A gay woman, married. They had been trying to have a baby for years and years and years and gone through multiple rounds of IVF. And she really just was at her wit's end and came to me for a reading before she became a student. And we talked through her chart. And what I showed her, she actually has similar elements in her chart that you do. I said, honey, I'm going to look at your chart and I'm going to tell you, I think your body is holding on to old trauma, because everything about that chart was about holding on to old stories and holding on to old trauma, and not breaking, not really having the natural drive to break those patterns, because she was very prone to having protective patterns. And so we did a lot of work on rewriting that story, literally rewriting that story. And I got an email from her 6 months later that they had done their final round of IVF and had gotten pregnant. And now their baby is 4, I think 4. So that's probably one of my favorite stories, because she swears that understanding that piece about her tendency to hold on to stories and really working on releasing old stories from her family patterns helped her tremendously. Certainly I've seen, here's another one of my favorite stories. I had a client one time, was a high level executive at an oil company, and was in project management, and he got demoted because he just could not do project management. And he was so confused. He was like, what is wrong with me? I'm smart. I've got all these degrees. I understand, but I cannot manage a project. And so we looked at his chart, and what we saw in this chart was that he was very well designed to start things, but not very well designed to finish things. Project management was just a nightmare for his natural energy. And so I told him, I said, you go back and you tell your boss, hey, I really need to be in project startup and not in project management. I can't do management. It's not my jam. So they did eventually move him, and he ended up going up very high in the company, and actually got a job doing project startup. And they invited his family to move to Denmark, where he worked, and it was just their fantasy life. They had such a great life after that piece. But just that little subtle understanding of, you're not here to manage, you're here to start, was huge. So
I love that. That's incredible. So I know you created something called quantum human design, and you actually fuse other tools into what you teach. And you don't just do one-on-one, but you actually teach the students how to become students of human design and use it. So will you share a little more about that?
Sure. So let's start first with, what is quantum human design? So I shared with you all that I started off my journey in traditional human design. And when I worked for Ra Uru Hu, one of the things that he said a lot was that someday he would rewrite the system for what he called the awakened person. And he basically said, the way the system is written in the traditional form, it's a tool to help people decondition or deprogram or decode their story. So traditional human design is really, really good, first and foremost, at helping you understand, who am I not? How did I internalize this identity that is really not my authentic self? Ra passed in 2011 and did not get to complete that second phase that he talked about a lot. And that sat with me pretty heavily, because for me, I started off my journey as a nurse. Then I was a certified nurse midwife. And I've always seen through birth and even through coaching clients later on, that people's stories impacted their outcome. I could almost predict which of my clients was going to have a difficult birth, or who was going to need to be transported if we were doing a hospital birth, just from the stories that they were telling. And oftentimes it was a story about either control rooted in fear or not being supported. And I carried that with me into my coaching practice, and really into my human design practice. And after Ra passed, I started getting a whole slew of clients that were saying to me, I really love human design. There's something about it that feels really true. And if I had found it 10 years ago, I really would have related to it, but I don't relate to it anymore. I've been doing, I've had a spiritual practice. I've been in therapy. I've done all this work, and I don't relate to the words anymore. And that really got my attention. And I really started to think, well, maybe I'll take over and do this second phase of human design. And so in 2013, I took all of the vocabulary words of traditional human design and went into a cymatics lab, a sound lab, and actually started testing different words to find high frequency language to redefine human design. The system stays the same. The framework is the same, but I created a whole new vocabulary to represent what's next, right? So if we think about in our story, whether you use human design or not, oftentimes when we go through a disruption or a shattering or a rebirth or a transformation, we first have to let go of the old identity. We have to recognize that part of why we have disruptive events in our lives is because we've outgrown our identity and we're ready for a growth cycle. When we get into that second cycle of transformation, which I like to call the void or liminality, we sit in this space where we know we're not who we used to be, but we don't always know who are we growing into becoming. And quantum human design to me is that second phase of using this high frequency language to begin to explore who do I want to grow into becoming. And it's a way of evolving the story beyond just surviving or just getting yourself back to baseline, but actually looking at how do we, once we get back to baseline, how do we then optimize your story so that you're really sensing and knowing and embodying the higher purpose of your chart. So if we looked at your chart, the projector in their evolved phase is what I call an orchestrator, which means you're no longer holding that vision and trying to push everybody towards the vision, but rather you're stepping back and allowing that vision. And I've heard it in the way you speak. I think you're already solidly in that orchestrator phase of being able to step back and let the vision sort of unfold, and you just move people, orchestrate people being in the right place at the right time to serve the vision, rather than doing all the grunt work of convincing and bribing and pushing and trying to get people to see it.
Absolutely. And whenever I do feel that way, I know there's a problem. I'm like, okay, the wins area needs someone. Obviously, social media doesn't have the right person right now for the dream and the way it's meant to roll out. So how do I call in that person? Because before it would be a forced, like, okay, I need to make the team do it. I need to make someone. I need to, and when I feel like I'm pushing too hard, I'm like, okay, actually, we need a different. The orchestrator, like you're saying, doesn't have all the right supports in place to do the thing. So yeah, I think it's such a beautiful way to evolve with yourself and not sit in frustration around, okay, because as a projector, sometimes you're supposed to sit back and wait. And that's not what we're taught to do right now in modern day times. We're not taught to sit back and wait. We're taught to go out and get what you want. And so it's about like, how do I build a system where all my team is reaching out saying, please, can we work together? Please, can we have Shivani on podcast or whatever it is? And then through my own energetic field is how I'm actually going to call it in.
Totally. Yeah. And really that's true, not even just for the projectors. It's actually really true for all of us. And I think part of what human design does for us is it brings us back into recognition that authentic alignment is an energetic state. And it is an energetic state that does call in all of the support because, again, if we get a little bit more woo about it, I really do think that there's a cosmic plan here. Maybe we're not privy to the plan necessarily, but we all have a role in it. And again, once you sort of move yourself into that role that you were born to fulfill, there's a corroborating support that rises up from the universe. And I find that whenever I hit those speed bumps or those places where there's resistance or it's not working and I get frustrated because I'm a manifesting generator, if I get frustrated, then, I also have to pull back and say, wait, what's up here? Am I, pushing too hard, too fast, in the wrong direction? Did I skip steps? Do I need to just chill out and really listen so that I can stay connected to what's next in my place of service?
Absolutely. And you know what I love? I love that you created that next evolution based on what he taught, what he was already calling in. So many of us know our human design. We understood it. We're like, okay, yes, I've got some work to do. I know how to leverage my human design, got that piece. But once you've played in that sandbox for a while, then that next step is really, okay, well, how am I going to evolve to the next level and call in even greater things? And as we age, I'm in my mid 40s now. It's like, okay, well, what is next? And how do I call it in? And sometimes you could be doing such big things. I'm in a moment where I'm doing so many big things. It's like, wow, you have a buffet of options. Which road do you want to take? And I think it's beautiful that human design can illuminate for us which road would actually be more effortless and be most, like you said, supported and equally balanced and supported from the universe. Because that alone helps you choose roads that might be better suited to you and your nature, leading to more success, more peace, more fulfillment. And like you kicked us off with, defining wealth and success on our own terms.
Right.
Because I think nowadays a big issue with our level of stress, chronic stress, which leads to chronic inflammation, is that we're putting ourselves on hamster wheels and on racetracks that we don't necessarily belong on. I still do it sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to do it this way. And then when I sit down and tune in, I'm like, actually, no, don't choose a road like that one. That road will lead you astray. Let's really choose the road that leads to fulfillment and wholeness. And remember, outside forces don't define our own inner compass, our own inner road.
Totally. And I think, it is a tool, I think, for our time, and gives us an internal connection that allows us to navigate all of the noise that we're experiencing right now. It can be very difficult to navigate if you don't have that interconnection. And I think bringing us back to, we are designed to work with and trust and be in connection with our body and with what the body, the information that the body gives us. And when we move into that space of really living from that deep connection and remembering this is what right feels like to me in my body, and that transcends what my mind might be saying or what society is saying, but this is what feels right to me in my body. And we get really comfortable with that connection and trust that connection, then we all can move into that place where we're really working with those cosmic strands of creativity that allow us to not only serve ourselves. I think this is the other part that I really, really, really love about quantum human design, is that ultimately, as your main character evolves, you're not just evolving for the sake of fulfilling your own story. You sort of move into this place of self-transcendence where the story that you are becomes the path of service, not just for yourself, but for your unique role in the world. I always think of, I have, as I said, I have 8 kids. Puzzles never lasted long in our house. I had a couple of really frustrated manifesting generators, dogs, pieces would get eaten and disappear. I had one kid that would rip off the little nubs and try to jam the pieces into, the wrong place because he hated puzzles. Right? We're all like those puzzle pieces. And a lot of us have ripped off parts of ourselves and tried to get jammed into the wrong space. And if you really think about a puzzle, it's only as beautiful as the sum total of the pieces. And if we're all not in our right place, or we've torn parts of ourselves off to try to fit in, we actually literally are not only affecting ourselves, we're affecting the entire plan. And I do believe that part of why the magic happens when we step into that integrity-based place with our own identity is because the universe really wants us to all be in our right puzzle place.
Yeah, absolutely. And reverberating in the right way with those people around us. I can just imagine beautiful puzzles and we're in the wrong places with the wrong colors and the wrong mix, impacting people in a weird way. Like it's a beautiful way to kind of illustrate why, the bigger why of it. So, Dr. Karen, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast today. I know we went a little long for those listening. I get it. But I wanted you to get this deeper picture of the potential of what human design and quantum human design could mean for you. So, will you share your programs, how you work with people, your website, and where they can find you, and any final message that you have for us today?
Absolutely. So I do have a brand new book called Quantum Wellness. And it is a very step-by-step sequential way of looking at your chart and using your chart as an intentional storytelling tool to begin to explore what foundation are you building your life on. You can find that book and any of my books. I have a couple of human design books on any major online book retailer. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, Dr. Karen Parker 22. I have a big YouTube channel, same thing, Dr. Karen Parker. And if you want to learn about our trainings or find a practitioner for a human design reading, you can go to our website, quantumhumandesign.com.
Amazing. Beautiful. Well, thank you for coming onto the podcast today. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your wisdom and taking this incredible wisdom forward into its next evolution. I think that's just so incredible that your team reached out to me and I was like, of course, yes, I want to meet her and have her onto my podcast. For everyone listening to the podcast today, thank you for listening in. Please share this episode with someone in your life who could benefit from this wisdom. To learn more about the podcast, please visit my website. It's drshivani.com, and we'll see you next week for the next episode.
Thanks for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for patients with pain and inflammation. www.fusionaryformulas.com. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. For more, visit shivanigupta.com. Subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button or subscribe in any of the apps that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today.